start it off, we have the pleasure of representatives from Watton Creek School. And Mrs. Huskin?
Mrs. Huskin.
Huskin, I'm sorry. If you lead it off, thank you.
Yes. These are a group of fourth grade students, all from one classroom, Mr. Matt Hathaway's classroom, that have the opportunity to come and sing for us. This is a song that we have done in class in honor of Veterans Day. We did the song personally because I liked the song and I thought it was good to do the Veterans Day song, but it led us into conversations about what exactly veterans are, who had veterans in their families, what wars came that veterans could have come from. So it turned into much more than just a one-day song event. It brought out a lot of family history, as you could see in the children, and I think they got more out of it than just celebrating one day of the year. The song is called For the Good of the Many, and we're going to sing it with a CD, prepared CD.
Can they come over here so that we can have them on camera, number one?
We can do that?
Number two, how many vets are in the room? Can I see a show of hands? Thank you for your service. If we could bring them over
Okay.
here, I'd love to have them.
Can we stay in our lines, front, back lines, basically? So if you were in the back, stay in the back. Come over here. Girls, come over this side. Nicely done. Okay. Stand up straight.
For
I would like each of the children, if they could make a single line and then introduce who they are, their first and last names. Do you want to start first?
Amy Oswald, Amelia Ordway,
Nice and loud.
Sydney Romulus, Lisa Telford, Kyle Sykes, Sam Morzowet, Jarrett Patton, Ethan Ness, Alex Holbrook, Andrew Haynes, Rissa Stout, Jenna Stout.
And Jenna is a ringer because she came as a sister summer. She's not in 4th grade, but she sang anyway. Thank you very much.
Gary? That's my shoe. Thank you very much.
Okay, Amy.
I need all I can get. Thank you very much.
Go right out the hallway. Where do you want? Right out the hallway.
Then we can go
Sorry,
I believe Mr. Gilbert would like to address the board. If you come forward and introduce yourself and address, and then do what you like.
Yeah, Dr. Martin, Exeter Township School Board members, I'm Gary Gilbert, Exeter, Farming Ridge resident, Exeter Township taxpayer. I'd like to read an article that appeared in the Reading Eagle in May of 1994. Voters sink bid for $2.5 million pool. The proposal for the Exeter Junior High School is defeated by a tally of 80% to 20%. Exeter Township and St. Lawrence voters Tuesday overwhelmingly defeated a bid to build a $2.5 million indoor swimming pool in the Exeter Township Junior High School. 80% of voters, 2,631, were against the proposal, while 20% of the voters, 660, favored the pool construction. The pool proposal was revived by a referendum after the school board rejected a plan to include in the junior high construction of the pool last year. When the Exeter Pool Action Committee pressed the issue, the school board asked the Berks County Board of Elections to include the non-binding question on the ballot. It's disappointing that the community spoke, said Louise Schwartz, Exeter swimming coach and chairman of the pool committee. Committee members were concerned about the cost of the proposed pool, estimated at $2.5 million for construction and $80,000 to 100% for annual maintenance. I feel at this point in time, there is no money in Exeter Township School Board to fund a swimming pool, said Gary R. Gilbert, a Farming Ridge resident who led the opposition to the referendum. I come here tonight to ask if it is possible that a ballot question be placed on next May's primary election next May. The issue being a merger between Antietam Valley School District and Exeter Township School District. If a question is, if it's possible, put that on the ballot, I request that a ballot be put on, the question be put on the ballot in the May primary. My tax dollars and the rest of the Exeter Township taxpayers pay bills for a major portion of Exeter Township School District. Let us decide if we want to merge with Manteca. Thank you. And I have some copies. I don't know if you're interested. I'll give them up here and you guys can pass them out.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Let me ask you one question, Mr. Gilbert.
Yes.
If this became revenue neutral, in other words, it was not going to cost this district 1 penny, what would your opinion be then?
I really don't see from what, I really don't see there's an advantage for us to take on Antietam. It's more than rumor, some of what's coming into Antietam, I don't think it's desirable to be part of Exeter Township School District. I mean, it's an antiquated, the buildings are antiquated. I mean, I think we're doing fine. We're a big enough district. I don't think we need to take on any more students or any more debt. And I don't see, I think it would be over time, be more debt. So at this, I really don't see that the advantage for Exeter Township taxpayers or school students to be a merger with Antietam. This happened years ago when Exeter first started, Exeter Township first started. Mount Penn didn't want any of us. Now they're the little guy. We were the little guy. Back then they didn't want any part of us. Now we're the big guy. Now they want to be with us. So I'd like to see a no.
Appreciate your input, sir. I
Thank you.
remember those times also.
Speaking to this question, is that possible?
I don't believe it's allowable under the current things. I tried to put a referendum out a few years ago, and the County Board of Elections would not allow that. I think the current rules read that such referendums are not allowed to be on the ballot, since the ballot is not controlled by us. We're not allowed to ask permission, basically. And quite frankly, I'll look into it. I got sources I can ask, but I'll look into it. Mr. Kramer, from RBC Capital.
Peter could not be here this evening, but will be here next week for the parameters resolution. I thought it'd be a good place to start. I know you asked me to come back this evening with several scenarios for adding some additional monies to the refinancing, both wraparound and some extended maturity scenarios. So we wanted to talk about that this evening. But I thought it would be a good start to go back over the existing debt profile very briefly. So the first 2 pages of my handout are the gross and net debt service of the school district. We've been doing a lot over the years, so this page is getting pretty wide across the page. But the first page is broken down into the component bond issues. And you can see the far right-hand column what the annual gross debt service is for the district. It's about $9 million a year. Drops off slightly to the $8.2 million a year level. And then in 2028, if you don't incur any additional debt, you're out of debt in 2028. Footnotes at the bottom of the page outline the various call dates and various interest rates associated with those bond issues. Page 2 is simply taking what you you see on page 1 and applying to it the reimbursement that you receive from the Department of Education. And so there's various percentages across the bottom of the page showing you for each of those projects how much was reimbursed by the state, how much was what we call the local share, or your district share of the debt service. And so what was a gross debt service number of roughly $9 million a year, the net payment that you make, net of the reimbursement, is about $7.7 million a year, and it's levelized all the way up there through 2028. So I thought that was a good place to start before we look at the various options for funding some capital projects. When I was here last, we talked about the refinancing of the Series A and the Series C from 2009, and also part of the 2010 issue. That's approximately a $9 million refinancing. And so what you asked me to do was to come back and look at 3 scenarios, one for $1 million, which would simply round out a bank qualified issue, because there's an advantage in the marketplace for selling $10 million or less in a calendar year. And so the first scenario simply looks at $1 million added in to that issue. And so the first column from the left on page 3 simply flips to the prior page, which is the net debt service existing. The first scenario is what we call the wraparound scenario. And you can see, if you look down over that blue column, to add $1 million for capital projects, we would simply put the principal out there in 2028. And really the impact to the budget would be about $46,000 a year to add $1 million to this refinancing. So 0.03 of a mil if you assume the mill worth $1,315,000. And again, that assumes you would tie it to the refunding, it assumes bank qualified rates, and it assumes one issue to close in January of 2014. The next page, page 4, I think what you were looking to quantify was what advantage, if any, is there to a level debt service bond issue stretching out the debt beyond what the wraparound may look like. And so if you take a look at the blue column here, this is a level debt service 20-year bond issue. The payment there is $74,000 a year, and the impact there is 0.06. And so the prior alternative, option 1, the wraparound, the impacted budget is about $46,000, and the impacted budget for the level debt service scenario is about $73,000 a year.
Without a balloon. Basically no balloon.
Right, it's just a level, plain vanilla, just like your home mortgage 20-year level debt service scenario. When we look at one option versus the other, generally speaking, the wraparound will come with a lower impact to the budget, and will come with a slightly higher, depending on your existing debt structure, higher payback because you're postponing principal. So you can see on the wraparound, your total payback's $1,579,000 versus $1,488,000. So very similar total payback. Again, it's a pay now, pay later thought, which is, would you rather have a lower payment impact budget of $46,000, or would you rather have a higher payment and pay less back over the life? In this scenario, it's a very close call in that the wraparound's really giving you the best of both worlds. It's giving you a lower impact budget, and it's not really costing you all that much more over the level debt service scenario. Mr. Kimura was asking about duration at the last meeting. Duration is actually longer for the level debt service scenario than it is for the wraparounds, but it's close. I think I have a footnote on the very back page. The duration on the level debt service structure is 13.76 years, and I'm sorry, on the wraparound on the level debt is 11.76 years. So that's the $1 million scenario. We then ran $2.5 million on a wraparound basis and a level basis. And so there you can see the impact for $2.5 million is $110,000 to budget. All the principal sits out there in 2028. The impact there is 0.08 of a mil, compared to $186,000 impact to budget on the level scenario. And again, similar paybacks in total, $3,985,000 versus $3,726,000. But the millage impact is 0.14 of a mil versus 0.08 of a mil for $2.5 million scenario. And then we went one step further to show you $3.5 million impact there is 0.12 mils for the wraparound, 0.20 mils for the level debt, 152 is the annual debt service impact in the blue column versus 259 on the level debt service scenario. So as you can see, as you ramp up from 1 to 2.5 to 3.5 million, the impact budget obviously is significantly more when you look at the level debt service structure versus the wraparound structure. If you choose anything but the $1 million option, the 2.5 or the $3.5 million scenario would be a standalone, non-bank qualified issue, either to settle as part of what we're doing now with the refunding. We would do $2.5 million to settle December of 2013, and then the refunding would be the 2014 bank qualified series. One of the things I wanted to talk about this evening was you have some leftover project monies that are escrowed on one of the recent projects. So I would ask you to handicap for me how you feel about what the likelihood is that you're going to have that $2 million sitting around. That will help us, I think, make a decision as to how much you borrow and when you borrow any additional dollars. And what I mean by that is if you have $2 million in the bank and you borrow $1 million here and keep a bank qualified issue, you would have $3 million for projects in total. If you think you're going to not have any of that $2 million that you have in the bank currently, and you need $2 or $3 million in additional money, the math will tell you you ought to get the money now. It's better for you to borrow at today's attractive rates than worry about the negative drag or the negative arbitrage of borrowing too soon for your project. So we've gone through that math for Ann, and it proved out that it's far better for you to borrow the money now at the attractive rates than maybe wait until your next refinancing opportunity, which comes up in next July or August. So that's really what we wanted to talk about this evening. I have some bullet points on the very last page. I think I've summarized the refunding savings are still in that 2% ballpark, $170,000 of net savings after the costs. We talked about the $1 million versus $2.5 or $3.5 million. The difference between bank qualified and non-bank qualified rates is about 15 to 20 basis points as we sit here this evening. We talked about duration. We would recommend the wraparound scenario, but we will have to talk about the level debt scenario and the advantages and disadvantages of each. The next refunding opportunity is the refunding of the 09 bonds, the 09B bonds. That issue will, if you don't add any new money to that issue, that will be a deemed designated bank qualified issue. It's a current refunding of a bank qualified issue, so it will also be bank qualified in addition to your refunding you're contemplating now. And that's pretty much it.
Scott, do I see the rate is actually lower on the level term than the wraparound?
Well, the last two scenarios are non-bank qualified. So that's the difference. The first $1 million scenario was that bank qualified rate, so you can see they're roughly the $1 million bank qualified rate is about 421 for the wrap and about 415 for the level. Again, that's a blended average rate. You're paying principal faster there as opposed to a pull-up maturity that's sitting out there in 1 year. That's the difference of the 6 or so basis points in the yield. And then the other two scenarios, the $2.5 million, $3.5 million, same thing.
Mr. Kramer, so as I understand from your comment, what's available to be refunded is only roughly $12 million next year?
The refunding of the 2000, well, we can refund two things next year. We're looking at $9 million now, which is the 2009 A's and 2009 C's, and a part of the 2010 issue, all of which can be advanced refunded.
So when you add those two together,
Well,
roughly?
those three together is the $9 million issue that we're contemplating now. The 2009 B bonds, I think, is another 8 or 9 million. And then we can refund the balance on an advance refunding basis, $11 million of the 2010 that we're leaving outstanding. We're only refunding a portion of the 10s now.
And because I'm relatively newly elected to the board, explain to me how the fee structure works with RBC for underwriting this.
Our fee structure is a percentage of the bonds that we sell, and so we charge a per bond fee. And so on a $10 million issue, generally our fee is $8.50 per bond. That would be $85,000. That's broken down into management fee, which is construction transaction rated, and then it's also the lion's share of that goes to pay salesmen their commission to sell the bonds in the marketplace. That's called the takedown portion of the issue. So if you call it $5 is takedown, $1 for expenses, and the balance is management fee.
Is that negotiable, or is that a RBC standard?
It's negotiable within reason. Generally speaking, that's what we work for all of our school district clients. It's hard for us to work for something significantly different at Exeter than Wilson, than Fleetwood, across the county and across the Commonwealth. It's not only our fee that goes into that, it's also paying salesmen a fair fee so that they're enticed to sell bonds at an attractive rate. So yes, we can talk about that fee, but it's more about the lowest total interest cost, which I think is what we're very good at, which is making the lowest rate in the marketplace. That's what we're paying for. It's far more valuable to you as a district to have a 4% yield than it is a 4.10 or a 4.15 yield, than $5,000 or $7,000 difference in our fee.
Being a stickler for numbers, do you think there's any way that RBC could ever prove that? To prove that you're actually getting the best rate for us,
Yeah,
relative to alternatives?
Sure. I think the way we prove that is on the day we would sell your bonds, or the day or two that we would sell your bonds, your rates would be equal to or similar to similar rated credits in the marketplace in Pennsylvania, with similar calls, similar structures. Absolutely. That's the way we show you our value, which is to say, did we get a good deal? Sure.
But by definition, if other folks are getting similar rates, then yours really isn't any better. Unless I don't understand your terminology is similar. If my judgment of your worth is on the day looking at the rate, and I judge it as similar to others that are trading, how do I tell that there's an advantage?
Similar or better, in line with, and again, there's a number of variables, so it's very difficult for you to say, this Exeter Township bond is exactly like the Wilson bond that's sold on the same day with the same rating and the same call. They're going to have different payment dates, they're going to have different principal structures, but by and large, a AA minus rated Exeter Township school district bond, I can show you if there's another AA minus school district bond in the market the same day, that our sales force is going to show you interest rates that are equal to or better than those other deals that are out there. That's our job. And as you know, markets will find a level like water finds a level. And so if you want to have a firm working for you, just like selling anything else, if we have our salesmen, they have one person to pick up the phone and call and say, I have an Exeter Township school district bond for sale at 4%. And the person on the other end of the phone says, no, I think it ought to be 4.05. But guess what? If your firm doesn't have anybody else to call, you get 4.05. Firm with a balance sheet like we have, resources that we have, the sales force that we have, we're going to hang up with that guy and say, no, we think it's 4, until we find a guy that feels the same way about the market that we do, within reason. That's finding the level in the market. There's a number of variables that come into play with selling that particular bond: call provision, rating, coupon structure, etc., what that buyer might be looking for. At the end of the day, we're driving the lowest true interest cost to you, which accounts for the fees it takes to do the deal, and the interest rates that we find in the marketplace. The intangible in that is our ability to deliver ideas, structuring alternatives, and good advice to the administration and you as the board in coming up with that plan of financing in the first place. So there's a host of things that I would say play out into how we, whether we're worth our salt or not.
So you also consider yourself a financial advisor?
We do not.
But you said the advice.
We give you advice. We are not your fiduciary.
You're not a fiduciary
We are
to
not,
us?
that's right.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, if you-
And in terms of the benefit that RBC brings, you wouldn't though be suggesting that it is any different than, say, what a Morgan Stanley or a PNC would bring, would you? In terms of bringing a debt offering from Exeter?
I think we would like to say that we're better than them.
No, I'm just saying that are you saying that?
I think we're as good as the next guy, for sure.
As good.
We're better. Yeah, I think we are the leading underwriter for school districts in the country. And I think we're the leading school district underwriter in the country for a reason. That's because we give good advice, and we do a good job when it comes to selling bonds. That's what we do.
Are you the leading underwriter in Pennsylvania?
We are the leading underwriter in Pennsylvania for school district bonds. We're the leading underwriter in the country for K through 12, yes. So I think we're pretty good at what we do. And I think we're pretty good at what we do because we've been serving many of those clients for 30 years. And so we can't do a good job for Exeter and not do, we do a good job for Exeter, we do a good job for Wilson. I think we provide all of our school districts with very good service, very good advice, and a very good end result in terms of pricing. If we didn't, they wouldn't ask us back. I think that speaks volumes about our ability to, over the years, the job that we've done for our clients. I think anybody that's in business feels that way about their clients, right?
So if I could just ask a question then, if all things are, as you said, were equal or better, then the ability to negotiate basis points could potentially make the difference for us.
The ability to negotiate basis points, yes.
Your fee. So if you're willing to have some negotiation on that, let's presume that Morgan Stanley comes in and you guys basically both offer the same thing, and we look to have a relationship with somebody who's going to bring the lowest cost to the table, then that would be a point of negotiation that we could have.
Certainly.
And Scott, I'm struggling with an issue. How can I interpret financial advice that doesn't come from a fiduciary?
I think where you're going with
No, I mean, just it's very straightforward.
No, the inherent conflict with an underwriting firm or any underwriting firm, and this has come to light recently with the new change to Dodd-Frank and post-2008 financial meltdown, which is our relationship with you over the years has always been that we are coming to you with ideas. You've asked us to provide alternatives to financing, help you through the planning process. All those things is what we do as an underwriter. There are financial advisors out there in the marketplace where you could engage a financial advisor in addition to an underwriter. Financial advisors do not underwrite securities. They're simply they are your fiduciary, and so they're giving you advice, and they're on the hook at the end of the day for that advice. The difference between a financial advisor and an underwriting firm is we are in the business, shocking, that we are in the business to make money, and there is one side of our house that may have a conflict with another side of our house, which is to say, my job, not financial advisor, but as your advisor / investment banker, is to do all of those things. Prepare you for market, get you a rating, get you bond insurance, structure a deal, and then bring you to market and have the other side of our house sell your bonds into the marketplace. To your point, that side of our house may not have the same interests that I have in serving you as my client. their interests lie with the ultimate buyers of the bonds. You know how the market works. So they're calling up buyers whose interest is to get a higher rate. My job on the investment banking side and the advisory side, if you're an advisor, is to get the lowest interest cost for you, my client. That's the difference between those two. And that's why Dodd-Frank has now made it clear that we need to spell out to you under G17 that we are not your fiduciary, although we're still doing all the same things we've always done for you over the years. If you want to get a second independent financial advisor as your fiduciary, you have the right to do that, and you can do that. That's the difference. I think that's the question you're answering, or you're asking.
Well, the question was, you used the word advisor. You used it several times. And I was just asking, how do I interpret advice or commentary from a non-fiduciary entity? And I think you answered it, that basically RBC is in the business as a fiduciary for itself. Correct. Because we were getting, in conversation, we were getting advisor and partner and friend mixed up. Because I think you're an underwriter and we are the originator of the bonds.
Fair statement.
Okay, fair.
But I don't think there's any, our firm's relationship with this district is going to be the same, whether you hire a financial advisor, an independent financial advisor who is your fiduciary. We would still be bringing you the same ideas if you wanted them. A lot of districts do. A lot of districts employ us and a financial advisor. 3 sets of eyes are better than 2 sets of eyes in some cases. If you're implying that we're not giving you good advice or haven't given you good advice over the years simply because we're quote unquote not your fiduciary, I don't think that's a fair statement. Under the letter of the law, I think you're correct.
And that's what I'm saying. Under the letter of the law, because I think in my conversation or question before, you said you would not want to ever suggest that you were a fiduciary.
We are not your fiduciary.
Correct. And so, again, I just want everyone to understand that comment. I think that's critical.
Scott, can I ask about the savings? It's gone down a bit.
Yep. Say the market we had a big number on Friday, which was the employment data. 10-year Treasury, we talked about, we showed you some charts at the last meeting where the 10-year Treasury had been as high as 3%, it had dropped to as low as 2.47%. Municipals had followed. We got a better than expected jobs number on Friday, and rates have moved from 2.47 up to 2.77. So we've lost 25 or 30 basis points here in the last 2 weeks. Markets been back and forth between the Fed's going to taper, the Fed's not going to taper, and we've had these swings in rates as a result. So that's where the market is today.
In your presentation, you asked if that $2 million was going to be around. Is that a real question, or?
Well, no, I think in terms of coming up with a plan of finance, it's important to hear from you what your expectations are for needs for capital project monies over the next 6 months. Speaking with Ann, she tells me that there's $2 million in escrow from the prior project, some of which may be used, all of which may be used, none of which may be used. And so I would just have you formulate your need based on how you feel about that money being around. And if you said, Scott, I think we're going to need that $2 million for the projects that we already talked about before, in addition to that, we need $1 million, $2 million, or $3 million. That will help us decide the plan of finance now, which is to say, if you only need $1 million, I would recommend you tie it to the refunding, do a $10 million bank qualified issue to settle in January. If you needed, in addition to the $2 million that's sitting in the bank now, another $2 million, anything more than $1 million, if you need more than that, then you would do a non-bank qualified small issue right now before December 31st. All part of the process that we're going through now. And then the $10 million refunding and new money piece for $1 million would settle in January. 1 million non-bank qualified and 10 million bank qualified. That would give you the best of both worlds. It would give you all the money you need, or whatever the money is you need, at the most attractive rates. And then you would have another bite at the apple, the refunding apple, in next summer. So it's really about how much money you need and when you need the money, relative to the money you have in the bank for the other project.
Well, and I presented to the board, and they're aware of what's available, and we have plenty of capital projects coming up, at least the next 3 years. So it's kind of trying to figure out, well, when would we do the bus barn, or use the funds for the capital projects if they want to borrow additional money at low interest rates to help with the whole scenario of paying for financing our capital projects. But again, the Watton Creek, it's actually 1.7 million, because we do owe a couple contracts. But there's still some uncertainty there.
Right.
And Ken's going to provide some information tonight, is that correct? As far as the long term?
No, this was just it. I was making a comment.
Okay.
We just gave the 5-year.
Well, the one thing I think we have to think of collectively is that the money we have and where we have it going for our projects down the road. And again, we have a lot of square footage, so there's a lot of projects. How about again? That we are not going to have the ability with the bills we have coming forward to move money over. There's just not going to be. We're going to be fighting to pay peasers and everything else that's going to go up, and I'm sure the state's not going to kick in a whole lot of extra money. So I think we're going to have to make that decision. If we are going to finance something now with whatever the rates are being as low as at least they are at the moment, that we may want to consider it, because once it runs out, it's going to be out. There will not be money to move over. Just the way the numbers are right now. At least that's the way I see it. So it's something I think we need to take a look at everything down the road as far as a 5 or that 10-year plan. And then if we are committed to the bus barn, then we need to take a look at that and make a decision, because that's going to be some real money.
When do you need to know?
The plan was to come back with a parameters resolution next Tuesday. Depending on what you decide, how much money you need, we would craft a parameters resolution with your bond counsel and your solicitor for either a $10 million bank qualified issue or two pieces, one being bank qualified and the other being non-bank qualified.
So you can work, if we make a decision by Tuesday, you can work.
What we would need to know before Tuesday, in terms of how much you need. If you wanted us to come back with a maximum, let's say you said, Scott, we don't know if it's 2.5 or 3.5. We could craft a parameters resolution for what the out number is. Let's say it's $3.5 million. And so we would come back with a parameters resolution for, the way a parameters resolution works is you take the $13.5 million you need and ramp it up for parameters purposes. So the resolution would have $15 million roughly on it, $16 million. Peter would craft the language such that it could be broken up into pieces, both bank qualified and non-bank qualified pieces in 13 and 14. That would give you the most flexibility. The way the parameters work, if next week you said we only want $1.5 million or $2 million or anywhere in between, once the issue gets done, Peter would file what's called a certificate of non-completion for the balance, and that would come back off the books. You file the original 15 or 16 million with the department, and then whatever you use, you find you need, decide that next Tuesday, the balance after everything closes would then come back off the books.
I'm not much on finances, but can you explain to me the difference between bank qualified and non-qualified?
Sure.
And the cost?
Absolutely.
In both those scenarios?
Sure. A bank qualified issue is when you as an issuer issue $10 million of bonds or less in a calendar year. If you do that, you keep your bank qualified status. And if you keep your bank qualified status, that means when we go to sell these bonds to potential investors, banks can buy those bonds and they get a special tax treatment for the interest on those bonds. If you issue more than $10 million, then you move into obviously non-bank qualified status for that calendar year. The difference is if you remain bank qualified, the rate, bank qualified rate, just to give you an example, is 4%. The non-bank qualified rate today is 4.15 to 4.20. So there's about a 15 to 20 basis point or 0.15 or 0.2% benefit to keeping the issue less than $10 million in a calendar year. And on 10 or 11 or $12 million, that's
That's a lot of money.
it's enough
In
to
my
make-
book. I don't know
it's
about
enough
yours,
to
but I know
try
my
and-
book it is.
Right, it's enough to try and maintain bank qualified status if you can for most of you.
I had another question. We heard from our auditor that we are going to have to now put our cost of our thesis payment on our books. Will that affect our credit rating?
Yes and no. The rating agencies have become very sensitive to everybody who has a pension liability and how they're dealing with it. In Pennsylvania, all the schools are in the same boat as they see their contributions increase over the next several years. The rating agencies will want, as we have the conversation with them, with Ann, they will ask the question, how are you prepared to deal with the increases that are coming down in the next few years with your contribution? Some folks have squirreled away money to help offset those increases. Others have not. Some folks have a lot of cash set aside in fund balance that they're going to use, and that gives the rating agencies more comfort than others who don't have that liquidity and that don't have money set aside for the rainy day. So putting it on your books makes it more transparent to everyone who sees your financials, understands what the liability is to the state system. How you deal with that and how you prepare for that is going to be really a reflection in your rating, which you're a AA minus, which is a very good rating relative to your peers. And I think you've prepared over the years and have dealt with over the years very well with those increases. You got to continue to do that if you want to maintain that AA minus rating.
So we have to have keep our reserve up?
Yeah, now more than ever. We just went through the rating process at Wilson, where they were upgraded from AA minus to AA. We are going through the process at Conestoga Valley, my hometown district, where they had scored a lot of money away in preparation for PSERS, but have spent some of it. And so the rating agencies are now looking at how quickly they're spending, how quickly the money's going away. And they're a AA minus that might be over the next couple years on their way to, they're a AA that might be on their way to a AA minus. Long story short, cash is king with any balance sheet, and they like to see more cash than
I mean, we didn't discuss that with, I thought I'd bring it up with you. I didn't talk to the auditor.
It's of the hour-long conversation that Ann will have with the rating agencies. They will spend a fair amount of time asking those very questions on how you're dealing with PSERS.
On the matter at hand, from the administration, the business committee, what are your thoughts? Are we pushing for the bus barn? We want to reinvest it? What do we want to do?
James?
My feeling is that we need to be moving forward with the bus barn this year. If not this year, we should be looking by the end of 14, this should become a reality. because we've been discussing it ever since I got on the board. It was discussed for many years prior to that. As we saw in a previous document, we're looking at investing $50,000 to $60,000 on a roof on the building that we said we don't even need if we're going to be replacing it. So I mean, we had to start looking at where we're spending our money, and right now the facility does not meet the needs of our operation with or without an EMT. So with that in mind, I think we have to be proactive while the rates are good and be moving in that direction. We've been considering various options. I think the one that seems like it has the most play is the Wadden Creek location, because it has the open ground. It has the ability to access a state route that will be well maintained, and it provides a much better situation for the expansion of our facilities if needed over time because of the openness of the ground that we have there. So I think that I would suggest that we look at including that inside of this financing.
I realize we discussed the bus barn before.
What? No, we never did.
No, okay. All right, so what we're making a decision on really is having the money available if we decide to do the barn.
Say that again?
We haven't decided to build the bus barn yet.
We have not.
So what we're deciding tonight is, are we going to go through these fiscal gymnastics to have that money available to us for the barn?
Well, you can do a parameters resolution because you have no commitment, correct? Or you are committed if you hit the parameters then?
Well, it's a couple things. We could give you the flexibility to, if you did a parameters resolution for $15 million, we need to know what the plan of finance is, because the refunding is leading the discussion here, which is to say we want to take advantage of the current rate environment to refund some of your debt for savings. And we want to have at least $10 million of that plan of finance be bank qualified. So we could come back with a $15 million parameters resolution that would give you the flexibility to have your first trigger be the refunding plus $10 million, right? So that's giving you $10 million of your bank qualified status for 2014. The rest of the parameters, as I said, Peter would craft it in a way that you could break it into pieces. Anything of that parameters resolution above $10 million is going to be non-bank qualified anyway. You don't have to issue that in January, although if you don't, then you're incurring some additional costs to do 2 issues versus 1 issue. But yes, we can come back with a parameters resolution that would allow you to break it up into pieces and decide later how much new money, in addition to the $1 million that you want. I think I heard at the last meeting that $1 million would go to roof, parking lot, and some other cleanup items around the district. So you have a need for $1 million of additional capital. Bus barn and other discussions, if you want to have those over the next 6 or 8 months, you can do that. The only risk there is that the rates are going to go up, and that that's the risk. The rates get away from you on that other piece.
Well, one, I wouldn't want to rush into anything, put ourselves in a position where we're up against the wall. 2, we have the money available right now if we chose to do so. It just would be where we have money allocated for the stuff down the road. But that would not limit the ability to then get additional money to fund those future projects. I would hate to jump into something tonight without having the information that we need and the numbers. That would be my only concern. I would not want to do anything that we would commit and put ourselves in jeopardy. That's all I'm saying. Rush into it. That's all I'm saying.
I don't want to commit anything, but if he wants to come back with it next week, Ann's going to spend this week figuring out, and then we get a briefing next week on what we ought to do. Right? If there are advantages to going into this now, I agree we need a bus barn, but I also don't want to I want to do what's right.
Well, what I was trying to illustrate here, there are the turf field, parking lot replacements. There are other projects which we could, if the bus barn does not solidify right away, you could use those funds for these other capital projects within the 3-year window. And that's the point I was trying to make through this. I guess the other question is the board comfortable with the 2% target savings? Because it's been 2.5 to 3 in the past, and I'm assuming that's just the way it is out there for everyone.
Yes.
And I know you don't have a crystal ball, but we have to set a target here. And is that the target? 2%?
You can set that target next week as well, so
Okay.
that's food for thought. Again, we've had targets higher in the past, 2.5%, 3%. 2% is bare minimum that I would recommend set as a target for sure, at a cost.
In your briefing, you said something. New bond issue before the end of the year. What does that do?
If you're, the parameters resolution, depending on what you tell me tonight, I think what I'm hearing from you is, I'm not sure what to be very honest. $10 million of this issue is going to be bank qualified, and that will settle in January. That's $9 million of funding and $1 million of new money. If you want the flexibility to do more than that, we would need to know, and you don't have to use it, but our recommendation would be if you said next week, Scott, we've decided we want to go for, right now, we know we're going to spend $2.5 or $3 million, whether it's for the bus barn or whether it's for these other various projects. We know we're going to spend that money. Let's get it now. The rate's attractive, and we're going to borrow $13 million now. One of those issues would settle in 2013 and be non-bank qualified. The other $10 million would settle in January as bank qualified. Right?
And so how much additional money would you then spend for that non-bank cost?
If you do it now, that's the other part of it. You're going to do it basically at the same time. So the cost that you're incurring for bond counsel and your solicitor, rating, and all that work, you're basically doing one deal, even though it's broken up by 2 weeks and settling in December and January. If you waited for the other piece till next summer or even later, then you're incurring another set of issuance costs to go through the process again, at least that issuance process. Does that answer your question?
Well, I was wondering the total costs were about. So, I mean, how much?
How much new money?
How much? Yeah. What would it cost us to have this non-qualified $2 million? You know, I mean, as far as when we have to pay back and everything else.
I'm not sure I understand, but the cost to do it, or the cost between bank qualified and non-bank qualified?
The cost of having this additional $3 million as compared to just doing the $10 million. Is there any additional cost?
If you do them together, no. If you do them separately, there is a separate set of issuance costs.
So
Yes.
then there would be no additional cost.
Right.
Ken,
If I could just reinforce something that Ann presented and Mr. Staub referenced. When we do our 12-year capital project guess, and that's all it is, to guess, you know, we push things out when the capital number needs to come down, we pull things in when the capital number needs to go up. We have the flexibility of workload to take care of that issuance if you decide to go that direction and we don't do a bus garage. By the same token, if we end up doing a bus garage, we will massage the capital plan to push those things further out. We do that all the time. We probably do it every quarter. Look at the 12-year plan of what popped up, what we think may be able to be band-aided for an extra year. So we have the flexibility of work to match up with whatever flexibility of money you choose to do. If that's a different way of explaining that. Thank you.
Well, Scott, if the rates continue, say the bond continues to go up, there really wouldn't be a benefit to roll that 9 in, correct? If the rates continue to go up as far as the refinancing?
Well, right, that's the target that we're talking about. I mean, that's kind of leading the discussion here, which is, you know, if we can't, if rates continue to go up, and there's no refinancing,
Then it would just be additional.
right.
And then the wise way to have a real plan.
Right.
Recommendation, what do we got time to do?
Target.
I would like to see the savings 2%, my personal opinion.
Could you repeat that?
I said I would like to see higher savings than 2%.
And if we don't get the 2% now, when's the next opportunity to get more than 2%?
I'm not sure there's going to be opportunities, but just my opinion.
Right, that's the
There won't be
risk.
one, right? I mean, for the near,
Well,
till the next recession.
I don't think the board should get into the business of trying to make interest rate policy.
yeah, no, I don't think, I don't do it on $100,000 loan.
I don't think that we want to start doing that.
With the cost of issuance, how long is the period of time until you pay back your costs? What's the length of time we have to hold this to be able to justify that 2%, Scott? You know, does it take 5 years to bring back, based on what we had as a debt, pay off that as savings that we're down getting from this along the way? Do you know what I mean? Like when you refinance,
Right.
you usually say, well, I need to be involved in this at least 5 years or 7 years to be able to get my payback out of this.
A little different than a home mortgage. We haven't talked about anything other than pushing the savings up front. In a home mortgage, when you refinance, generally it's just lowering your payment over the 20 or 25 or 30-year amortization that you have for your home mortgage. Here, when we look at refinancing, we generally push all of the savings up front. And so you realize budget savings in year 1 or 2, sometimes even 3 years, and then your debt service goes back to what it was before. That's how you realize savings when you refinance a bond issue. So there's no payback per se. If you refinance, you got to wait a certain period of time, or if the
Okay, yeah, I understand.
Tim, can I ask for your clarification? If we don't get 2% now,
I mean, if we don't get 2% now, we don't know that in June of next year, rates aren't going to be double what they are now. I don't think we want to make that forecast. I think we want to do it when we know what we can do.
so you'd recommend?
I mean, I don't know where the 1 and the 2.5 and the 3. I mean, what I was talking about last time when I chatted was that I would like to basically bring as much forward for refunding as possible when rates are at 30-year lows. Period.
right, and that's
And I'm not going to be in the business, and I don't recommend that we try to get in the business of saying, well, you know, if rates go up, if this happens, and we can talk, but if something happens, a recession, and rates go down, we got bigger problems than a bond issue. I will tell you that. If we go into a recession soon, we got bigger problems than a bond issue. If rates go up, we're going to be sitting here, and somebody, I don't know who, is going to say, you know, you could have issued these at 3, and now rates are 5. You're off 200 basis points on $20 million. That's a lot of money. So I'm suggesting that we pull as much forward as we can and move on. But that's just my thought.
just to be clear. The $9 million that we're showing you to refinance is the only part of your existing debt that either you can refinance or produces any savings from refinancing. even though you can advance or fund the 2000, other portion of the 2010 bonds, they're not producing any savings at the moment.
Is it standard then to issue these refunding bonds with these tight windows?
The window comes about because of the call feature.
Right.
So,
That you write into it?
well, the shortest call feature that's available in the marketplace is a 5-year call. And so all of your issues, but for your non-bank qualified large issues, have had 5 years and then 10-year calls. And so you have, and you can only advance or fund a new money issue one time over its life, meaning you're refunding it in advance of its call date. So every other time you refinance, you've got to wait until the call to do so. And so as you look at page 2 of all your existing debt, actually page 1 is a better snapshot. Your overall interest rates are 2.25%, 3.7%, 2.16%, two very, very low rates. We're talking about refinancing bonds from 2009, which are 4%, and producing some savings. There are no other opportunities with your existing interest rates or your existing debt that produce any savings by refinancing. And so, to your point, I agree with you. You should be refinancing everything you possibly can in this market, and that's what we're doing. We've looked at the 2010 issue 10 times to Sunday to say, is it better to refund this maturity or that maturity? None of those other maturities are producing any savings. The 2% threshold is, generally speaking, you want to save, in round numbers, at least what you're spending to do it. And that's where the 2% target comes around, which is a minimum benchmark. What's the size of your budget? $66 million budget. You want to have some minimal, meaningful target for savings, and that's generally 2% in municipal finance as a bare bones minimum. Now, that's not to say that 170 grand is not a good number, but you're spending that to issue the debt.
Cover those costs.
Okay.
Historically, it's been 3%. We've gone down to 2.5%, and that's good.
Great. I apologize. If I meant to say that we were waiting until July to do the 2009 deeds, we're only waiting because they were advanced or funded before, and the IRS rules said we can't refund them until next July. Otherwise, I'd be here. We get paid in percentage base. I'd love to sell $100 million of refunding bonds for you this evening, but I can't. I'm only telling you what you can do and what's most advantageous to you.
What are you gonna tell them to go home and do? And your recommendation?
Well, no less than a 2% savings. And as far as any additional bank qualified, Ken Fitz makes a good point. We can move money around, and we do have the money available in a Walking Creek. So, I mean, that's really, if your feeling is, well, the rates are good, get additional funds in, or decide when we have more of a solidified plan as far as the bus fund. So at this point, I think the focus should be on getting savings for the refunding with a minimum of 2%.
And not borrowing additional money.
I would go to the 10.
You go to the
I would
10.
At least go to the 10.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if you, that bus barn is gonna be 2 million minimum, correct?
2.5.
I said minimum, depending on how you, because if we use the land.
I never worked on it.
Yeah. I mean, my concern just is, again, too, with what we have sitting there and what we know we have to do. And with the inability to transfer money over to that capital reserve fund, that's my concern. on what I'm talking about, or other people. What are other stuff?
I'd support the 10 million.
Yeah, I can support it. I think it's the first actual, real directional thing I've heard here this evening. It's just, I haven't heard anything real definite, and I think the ability to have the funds available to move over, I think, is extremely important. Particularly, I think we have a clear idea what the future is going to be. Unfortunately, we're going to need the funds.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, we're just going to need the funds. I don't think, yeah.
Future budget deficits,
Yeah.
et cetera.
So are we looking at just 10, or do we want to get a couple mil more? That's a low interest.
Well, it's kind of like, once we went over 10, though, we then went
It must be a
outside.
separate issue.
Yeah, so we should be able to
Over
do
10 is no longer bank qualified, but you're still paying interest on money you're not going to be using right away, right? I mean,
Yes, and one of my bullet points alluded to the fact that it's better for you to borrow at today's attractive rates than to worry about borrowing at 3 and readjusting at 0.5 over the next 6 or 8 or 10 months until you solidify the plans for the bus barn. It makes more sense to borrow $12 or $13 million now, 10 million DQ, 2 million or 3 million non-bank qualified over year end. The timing is good because you can settle one in December and one in January, and then you have the money available to use, whether it's for the bus barn or whether it's for those various other projects. That's what you have access to.
Well, we've said that we've got projects all over the place. Do we want to do it with cheaper money, or do we want to?
Well, that additional 3 million, that basically would be redoing the field and the bus barn, when you get right down to it. That's what that amount would be. If you can do it relatively at a lower interest rate and as budget neutral as you possibly can. But I just don't want to be in a position to commit to that extra 3. I'd like to be able to have that option. So again, how that can be written up, because I don't think we have enough information. You say we want it for sure, but I think we'd like to at least have a position where it will be available. Again,
I think we're back where we were. So
No,
basically,
I'm talking about how they write that up.
I
Again,
understand.
I'm not sure how they write that up.
I understand what you're saying. But right now, I see we want to have the flexibility. We need to have this, get our act together before next week, but we tell him tonight, go home and do 10 and 3.
Is that what you said, Joe?
In essence, but again, too, I don't want to
But we
commit to
can-
that. I don't want to be in a position to commit to 3. I'm not sure again.
But we
how
can
that
turn
is.
it down next Monday,
Okay.
or next Tuesday.
but when you bring the parameters back next Tuesday, we have to make a decision, right?
You have to decide which one you should.
Yes.
Right, and what will you know next Tuesday that you don't know now? What will change by next Tuesday? It sounds like we're having a hard time making a decision.
I think we will know more from our point of view, because Ann's going to tell me.
You know, the time.
By next Tuesday.
Yes, yeah, and the other thing you have to keep in mind is the additional debt service. Yeah, I know it's cheaper money now, but our debt silo will go up if we're gonna add in that $2.5 million. But we definitely could use the money within the next 5 years. You didn't have it, to Ken's point, you can push things around, but we definitely have a roof in 15-16 at $950,000 if we completely replace, another one in 16-17. So these are real projects that we need to do to keep our facilities in good condition. And it will be difficult over the next 5 years.
So go home and prepare 10 and 3. If we don't like it next week, we'll tell you something.
I'll give you
Makes sense.
a call.
That's what I'm hearing from you. I'm hearing you can spend the $3 million, whether it's on the bus barn or the other various projects. And you ought to do it now because rates are good. That's what I'm hearing. We'll be back.
Any other comments? Sir?
We had a very good presentation by Ann on something called PSDLAF.
Yeah.
Do you recommend that?
Pennsylvania School District Liquid Asset Fund is managed by an arm of RBC. It's just like Pliget. It's the investment management arm of the bank. So I'm not here to recommend or not recommend their services. That's not your fiduciary.
You know, I really hope that goes on record. I mean, I hope that goes on record, Mr. Chairman. I hope that goes on record.
Okay. Are we ready to move on? You got your direction? Let's go do it. Now on your blue sheet, status verse. I'm about at 45 minutes past where I normally am. Next week, we will be considering 3 sets of minutes for approval. Does anyone have anything to say about them at this point? Then we will also be first reading of new policy on graduation requirements, and we'll be voting on the post-issuance compliance. So, any comments to Mr. Stubb? We've already had 2 hours.
Well, there's not a lot to this. In attachment 6A, we'll be voting on the demand response proposal from HES for the utilities for 2014 to 5/31/2017. I asked Dan earlier, we only had the one shutdown in September. Is that correct? We just had the one?
Over the last 3-year period or just in the last year?
Last year.
Just the one in September?
Just the one, and it didn't affect the children, so it's down a little bit, but I guess that's just because, again, what the bid was out there for.
Right, the auction of the.
Yeah, the whole demand response trend has been downward in the last few years.
But again, it's an opportunity for us to get a couple bucks back, and then attachment 6B will just be for the budget transfers. So that is it.
Any questions, comments on any of it? Dr. Bender.
We'll start with resignations on Part A. Part B is appointments. One thing I'd like to ask for is number 3, the substitute teachers, if we can separate out the guest teachers from the certified teachers when we need to make a motion to approve those positions. Thank you.
I'd like to ask the personnel director, the qualifications of guest teachers as compared to qualifications of teachers that have been in a 4-year program from an educational institution such as Kutztown, Penn State, or what state schools.
Basically, it's the type of certificate issued. Guest teachers have an emergency certificate, and what's required is simply a bachelor's degree. And of course, teachers with an instructional 1 have gone through the teacher preparation program and have an instructional 1 certificate.
When did this, I was a teacher, and I never heard of guest teachers when I was...
Mid-90s.
Mid-90s?
Yeah.
I was still a teacher then, but I still never...
But emergency certificates always existed for bachelors. The IU preparing the guest teachers through a program started in the mid-90s.
Well, how many days do they go? I understand that they might have a,
Maybe we can prepare maybe we can have that prepared for next week.
All right, would you have that prepared?
It's
Yeah, we have
Pat, if you just email me all your questions, so I'd be sure I hit them.
All right.
Okay, then we have Part C, a leave of absence. D, change of status. Part E would be staff conferences. I have a question about number 7.
7?
What does PDCA stand for?
Volleyball Clinic Association, I don't know. It's for volleyball.
BBC, I thought that was part.
That's what it is. It
this
is
our-
Volleyball Coaches Association.
Is this the one where we flip-flop everything?
We did previously, but I don't know if these coaches are still involved with that school district. That's why I'm questioning what's going on there. And I thought we paid for it last year, but maybe I'm just 2 years off.
We'll check on that.
I don't know where to ask the question, but in looking at the coaches' salaries, what triggers a bonus for a coach?
Is that the year?
Bonus is postseason. Postseason. Yeah.
Well, we ever give it a
Coaching
bonus?
season, playoffs. Yeah, that's why I put that right in with
Just curious.
yeah, that's what it is.
Is the band director get a bonus for going to football team?
I don't think so. That's a good question, but I don't believe so. Because they kind of do their thing all year.
And cheerleaders. You could really slippery slope.
That's it for personnel.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Kutcher, student functions.
Item A, just reporting the person 60-mile radius. Yeah. And you have in your folder tonight the notes thing from the student functions. And that's it.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'd like to ask you a question about the student functions. You said like November 6th, November 8th. Are we going to be approving things that they already know? Or what?
You're not
We're just
approving
recording
those,
them.
Pat.
We're
Those
just
are just for
recording
our
them.
information only.
Oh, okay.
They're within the 60-mile radius, we only approve the ones that are outside.
But they were already approved?
You don't approve.
You don't approve.
Just
They
for-
don't
need to- they don't need to-
Oh, you don't have to be approved?
Right,
Oh,
right,
okay.
correct.
Okay, got it. All right, I'm sorry.
Big time.
Any other matters for discussion at the moment?
I have a comment.
Comment, please.
Just, I'm very concerned about some of the comments that come, that raise their ugly head every time there's a discussion in this room or any room when we're talking about this merger. I'm going to tell you all something. I'm tired of us talking about what, of people bringing to the table what's been brought into Antietam. I work with poor kids every day. And this is what I want to tell you. They're no less deserving, they're no less smart, they're no less committed than anybody else. And they deserve an equal opportunity. Now, we have a system in this state that just fosters and fosters more inequality and more inequality and more inequality, and I'm tired of seeing it, and I'm tired of seeing people bring it to the table and say that's the way it ought to be. The Constitution of Pennsylvania calls for this Commonwealth to provide a free and appropriate education for every kid in the Commonwealth. I'm tired of reading the blogs, I'm tired of listening to it. And at some point, we need to make the right decision for this school district, but I also hope we can consider making the right decision for this community. That's all, and I apologize, but you know what? It just gets old after a while.
Any other matters? Mr. Schlupp.
Okay. I know one thing, I'm not sitting there right now. That's the first thing I'll say. Good evening.
Joe, you're if you sit there, you can refinance your mortgage.
All right.
Great.
It's hard. My head's spinning just trying to figure out where everything was going with that. Thank you for your time. Last year, PSSA scores for us at Jackson Hole was a down year for us. I thought we were making a lot of strides and a lot of gains over a lot of years. Since I've been there, we've been making progress. And last year was a big setback for us, and I'm hoping it was an anomaly because it seems like things are going in the right trajectory.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
You made the comment between 75% turnover of staff in 2011. Were those new staff members to the district or reassigned to a grade?
They were one was from another building who hasn't taught for quite a while. Another one was a new assignment to a different grade from first grade after 30 years of first grade to third grade. And one of the assignments was from another school as well.
So,
my intentions are not to throw anyone under the bus or anything like that. They're all working hard at it.
Right.
There's a curve there. There's a learning
right.
curve.
And that's what struck me. So, is there some way that we can offer support so that this moves forward, so that it all gets sort of sorted out, or don't?
I think about it all the time. As our school shrinks and as our district shrinks because of enrollment, it becomes more and more difficult to make the moves around. To make moves into places, to take people from one spot and put them in another spot, you're kind of just chasing your tail around. Sooner or later, someone's got to be there, someone's got to learn the curriculum, someone's got to, you figure it's 3 years. In my estimation, when you take on a new position, so you know the curriculum, first time you're learning, you're teaching it, second time you know the pitfalls, the third time you start, you're wiser. You know what you're doing, you know what to prepare for. It's not something that you can kind of speed up. I know in switching grades myself, no matter how seasoned you are as a teacher, when you go into a new position, there's a learning curve. And it was just a lot at once. There was a lot of learning curve at once for us. And then you had classes of kids kind of that historically have been, sometimes with better classes of kids, sometimes with, the class in third grade year before that went to fourth grade this past year was not a group that achieved well despite all our efforts. Sometimes it was kind of a storm that came there. And we kind of didn't expect it for sure. I didn't expect that we would be maybe making giant leaps forward, but I didn't think we would step back. And it's the first time we kind of didn't make our AYP in 11 years. So we were at one point where third grade was so strong, we were at 99%. We had 99%, 98 consecutive years. The test gets harder, things change, the variables change. It was kind of a storm for us in last year's fourth grade PSSA and third grade as well, because that's where a lot of this report card scores came from. Third grade reading counts 2 times, and fourth grade reading was a down year for us, and not by lack of effort by anyone.
So is this year then, is the building kind of stabilized?
We're getting there. We're getting there. I think that this year is their third year in there, and they're more cohesive as a team. But then again, we're shaking that up again next year, because now we go back to we lose another third grade teacher next year because of enrollment. So where does that person go? Where do we? This rolls around my mind all the time. What are the variables? What's the best way for people working together? To have the cohesiveness in a group who are groups of people that are just going to gel together. In my opinion, I think that's one of the biggest factors is how people work together. The Yankees don't win every year. Anybody's a Yankee fan, sorry. But the Yankees don't win every year, no matter how much they spend. It's the teams that work together that win the pennant. It's the teams that work together that win the Super Bowl. It's not always, it's not always the team on paper that should win.
Mrs. Kutcher, you're asking a question that is a very important question, is what support are we lending to the teachers, particularly when they're moving to a grade level, but not even our teachers that are moving a grade level, but in light of the Common Core coming, which is a real major change, and those tests are going to change. And I think one of the biggest impacts that we've had as a district is having a literacy coach. Our literacy coach, Karen D'Annunzio, who you met last year, is out literally in the classrooms every day, working alongside individual teachers, groups of teachers, and in front of entire staffs with the professional development that we have designed to really be enhancing teachers' work in literacy to really support the students. So your question originally is, what support are we lending to these teachers? And that is a huge effort and a huge push in the district.
The next part of what I have written down is the early release days, and I think the release days are really turning out to be the additional early dismissals that we have in school. They're turning out to be really beneficial. I see a lot of people doing a lot of really good things, and people have embraced it. And I think, stepping back and just looking at the big picture, it's been a good move for our district. I see a lot of benefit, and the groups I meet with every week are going forward and they're getting better at what they're doing, and I think it's been a very good move for us. United Way volunteers, we have volunteers who come every week to work with our kids, and it's kind of interesting how charged up they get. They're there sometimes a half an hour before the kids get there. I have to get them all ready, get them all set up, because they're kind of anxious and ready to go. It's been a nice little program. Last year we made $3,000 in our giant A+ rewards. I don't know what the deal is this year. I sent a few letters out trying to get some more people involved in it, and whether they know, they must know by the letters they sent that they need to re-register. And we went up every year, and this year was 100 families as opposed to last year we had 141. We just had a safety inspection the other day from Loomis Group, and safety's kind of, it's important. I know it's important for the district. I know it's important for our budget. And we've done like 600 days where we've had one, an accident that couldn't be prevented. Kind of teacher rolling something, and it was heavy enough that the carpet punched up underneath it and fell. And she missed a day of school, if that. And usually it was just expenses for X-rays, maybe for the case. Our SES status is at 32%. I'm sure it will climb. It's climbed every year since. And that's taxing. It becomes more and more taxing as our numbers get smaller, as our enrollment goes down. It's kind of, the more kids you have and the less staff you have, that's another crossroads right there for us. Where the personnel, we have less and less personnel to work with the kids, and we have more and more kids who need help. And I'm not saying directly related to SES, but we all know as educators it's the number one predictor of school troubles. So academically.
So what's the implication there? I mean, we started off the conversation with the need for support. What do we do with this information that more children are, need free and reduced lunch?
It's just taxing us more. The time that we're able to work with smaller groups, we have to meet with more smaller groups. It cuts that time that we have for the kids. In public education in general, poverty is the biggest battle against public education. I read some articles this week about, no matter how you look at it, poverty is by far the biggest problem for public education. People will talk about unionization is the problem, and people will talk about how the K-12 structure isn't effective. And meanwhile, it's working in all our affluent school districts. In all the school districts where kids are well-to-do, the unions and the system is working wonderfully. We have some of the best students and we compete in the world with anyone. Poverty is the single biggest issue. So as it becomes difficult, how do we combat it? We more personnel. I don't know. I'm saying we're not in that position to do that. If we had our druthers, it probably would be a way for us to be more with our lowest kids. Kind of at a point now where we're still okay yet. We're kind of getting stretched, it's getting a little more difficult, but I don't see the people being run over. I worked in inner city school districts sometimes where people were kind of run over. There's a situation where there's just too much need and just not enough staff. Not even rooms for enough staff. It just becomes more challenging, that's all. Yes?
Yeah, I guess my thought is, if we say every child can learn, and our goal is that every child can learn, and that poverty is not a reason for them not to learn, what does that mean for our staffing and our mission and what we do in the schools?
Well,
maybe that's a long-term question.
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, it's for everyone. It depends where we're going to put our efforts in public education. Where's it going to be? The research is lower class sizes are an improvement, and having the ability to, and we do. We have a lot of places. We have a lot of things in structure structural support, we have people who are reading specialists, we have really a lot of great aides. We have a lot of great aides who work tirelessly for not a whole lot of money to really help the children. So down the road, we need to maintain our ability to service the kids, and once we get to the point where we can't, then it's either we have to have more personnel to do it, or find a way to think outside the box and say, okay, we need to find times of the day to structure things differently for our kids. Right now, we're kind of up against it. I'd say we're kind of at an equilibrium right now.
Dr. Bender, I would just suggest that, obviously I agree with the statement that all children can learn, and poverty is not, does not indicate that they're not going to learn. However, there are students who come to school with more needs than others, and it's going to take more resources for them to learn. They will learn, they certainly can learn. It does take more resources, it does take more time. And I agree with what Russ says, that poverty is one of the biggest problems in public education, if not the biggest problem in American public education. And yes, all children can learn, but it's not the same. You can't take children who have, not had the advantages that other children have, and already come to school with at a disadvantage, and expect them to learn in the same amount of time and with the same resources. They need additional resources, they need additional time to learn, reinforcement of their learning, et cetera, maybe different materials, but the more students you have, if you live in poverty, the more it does tax your resources. It doesn't mean they can't learn, they certainly can. It doesn't mean they're less intelligent, they're certainly as intelligent. But not having had some of the advantages that middle-class children or upper-class children have had, it really is something that we have to fight against in our public schools. We have to overcome those obstacles, and to overcome those obstacles takes more people, more resources, and more time for the kids. They can't all do it necessarily within a year. They can't maybe achieve the same amount of learning in a year because they already started maybe not at the same point.
Yeah.
It's kind of so many children that we have that we register that need services. It's unbelievable. From when I first started in the district till now, I bet you the last 20 students that we registered this school year, I bet you 20 of those 20 needed services. IEP, needed speech, needed OT, PT, needed services. I bet 20 out of 20. At one point it was probably 2 out of 20. It just seems like, it's more and more kids who have more and more needs. And it's 2 kids yesterday, 2 kids last week, we registered 4 kids. All of them have needs that we have to meet. And it's just a situation that the inner city knows all too well. It's a situation where children are, their home life, the research is that children who come to school from the inner city come to school with a working vocabulary of 5,000 words. Children who come to school from affluent areas come to school with a working vocabulary of 9,000 words. Why can't kids write? Because they don't know what to say. Why don't they know what to say? Because they don't have words. It's an uphill battle. It truly is. It's hard for them. It's hard for us. It's taxing. Right now we're about at an even keel right now. We're saturation point. And we're getting to the point where it's becoming a lot. Our demands are a lot.
Dr. Spafford, how has the all-day kindergarten worked out in your school as compared to when we didn't have all-day kindergarten?
The all-day kindergarten has been great. All-day kindergarten and kid writing in particular, probably, I think kid writing made more of a difference in public education than anything I've seen since I've been in public education. We have great volunteers. I think we had, the other day we checked, we had 26 parents who come in on a regular basis to do kindergarten, to do kid writing with our kindergarten. The full day has definitely been a giant advantage. We used to have the pre-first, the kids who were struggling with the pre-first and then on to first grade. And I'll be honest with you, I fought for that. I thought that was a thought that it was going to be more valuable for them than full-day kindergarten to spend the money that way. Full-day kindergarten's been wonderful. It's been a huge benefit.
That's one thing I think we've done, Dr. Bender, to help everything through. And everything that Dr. Slotman has said is true. Yes, all children, Dr. Martin, all children can learn, but those that come with a deficit, that other kids, you know, who have all the experiences, they're way ahead of them. And that's why I think, I think we should really look into preschool, to be honest with you. That would even be of a better help to our students.
When I was principal in 11, we had K-4. Children went to K-4, then they went to kindergarten. It was similar with curriculum. The faster we get them, and the faster we start working with them, the better chances they have.
I'm just not so sure that what we've done to public education in the way of the way that we measure learning, I'm not so sure that that's really legitimate. The fact that a kid can't perform on a test, I don't know whether that's really an indicator of whether or not that student will grow and be a productive member of our society.
All you people that would like to, I have gotten a book. It's called The Reign of Error.
Yeah, right.
And it is by Diane Ravitch. And she is an absolute advocate for public education, and she has exposed all these privatizers of public education. She has a blog. I mean, people should go on it, and it's dianeravitch.org. And you will learn a lot about what is really going on in public education and those that are trying to destroy it.
Dr. Schwab.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, Dr. Schwab, but you got me on that. It's very important.
Yeah, he goes. I'm sorry, did I interrupt myself this time? Yes, ma'am, I will speak into the microphone. I'm looking at, I guess I tied three different things together. You have the PSSAs, you have the Night Awake, and then you have, unfortunately, the SES situation that's going on. And I look at United Way volunteers and I say, you know, really we're looking at intervention type of activities so we can talk to those, work with those students in a proactive way so we can produce an environment where they can learn more easily. And you mentioned the fact that we have a number of aides in the school. Do you think that we need more aides that could possibly bring those children into more of a small group setting and do more one-on-one type of environment stuff than we're doing right now? How can we help the students to overcome possibly, you know, that deficit they came to our school with, but now we want to help them to be able to succeed and produce an environment where they have the opportunity to not feel like they're just surrounded by so many people and they can't get to where they need to be because they just feel maybe intimidated or they're afraid to get participating. But when they get on that one-on-one environment, they have more of an open ability to partake in what's going on. I don't know, I'm just trying to look for, I'm brainstorming inside my head right now of how can we work with you to work with the students to produce something where you had the volunteers coming in, you mentioned that parents are coming in for the kindergarten, where you have these United Way volunteers. Do we need a pre-school, not as in preschool, but do we need like an early time, like an 8 to 8:30 intervention, a bigger program there, or how can we do this, or what can we work with there to produce something?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, there's a million things that are in the way if you try to do something like that. You know, that obviously our budget. We talk about all day long about our budget. It's huge. Our budget is a giant situation. Obviously, the more people you would have to work, you get to the point where every kid has their own teacher. How great would that be? But you're going to get to the point where there's 1 for 100. Somewhere you have to find a point where that's equilibrium in the middle of what can we afford and what can we have.
Well, how many aides do you have right now, and how many?
Right now we have 1 aide per classroom, and we have a lot of special ed aides who are one-to-one with students who are autistic or students who have ambulatory needs. We may have seven full-time aides who are in it, and we have an aide for each grade level who works half day.
Do they work with like three teachers each per aide, or 4
yes,
teachers per aide?
One aide will work for a grade level, 3 or 4 teachers.
I mean, where we're looking at something like this is it's a situation where we need 1 or 2 more aides to be more of the reading aides, or something like that, to be able to look at targeting.
The use of the aides and their time is incredible. I mean, they do clerical work for the teachers on one end, and they space that between all of our aides who are working with children. All of them we have some aides who are already assistants to the reading specialist, who will work directly with them on the 4-hour shift and see children all that time during the 4 hours. Some who do some clerical things, but also have great. We have some we have them working in our guided reading rooms to help the teacher. When the teacher's working with small groups, they're working with others to make sure they're in task with what they're doing, and we swat them around. So they'll all be in first grade, they'll all be in second grade. So we try to make the most clever use of their time, and they're really valuable for what we pay them. They're really valuable. And when you get good ones, you find good aides. A lot of our aides are college graduates who had careers in other jobs already. I look back and I think how many of our aides, either stopped working to raise children and now we're back in the field. They're very intelligent people who are doing a wonderful job. It's a balancing act. There's a budget, and there's the reality of the budget, and there's the reality of the education.
Well, which is one of the reasons I was looking at maybe, we can't necessarily always reduce a class size.
Right.
But an aide, frankly, costs less money than a teacher. But they can work under the guidance of a teacher to provide that extra little time. I know from personal experience listening to this at home from someone who is an aide, that she used to do a lot of phonics things and things like that. And the program over time changes and environments change. But it's a lot of ability to work the one-on-one, which was part. What are you finding you're getting onto a new subject? How is your participation level? Parents, do you think you're still a percentage of participation you were, say, 5 years ago? Is it dropping off?
Parent volunteers?
Yeah.
I would say probably more. We really, it's something we really go after, something we really push and try to get parents in. And when they come, they're hooked. Then they come in and they start working with the children. I don't see any of them ever come and don't come on a regular basis. There's some people who come, they do kindergarten writing, and then they just keep coming. They're just, they have time, they'll come in building work. They're a great resource. There's a lot of people who are really good resources.
So how many aides do you think, if we could give you some aides to help, especially in the early grades, in the first, like kindergarten, first, second grade?
That question's for Ed Guy here, so.
But I mean,
I'll take 10 tomorrow.
But I'm really, that's, you want to get them really in the beginning, when they're starting to learn, not turn them off over education, get them into it. What you have, how many, first graders?
3 first graders.
And 3 second graders. So if you had an aide at each one more, would that help? Would that help a lot? Not what, $8 or what are they going to pay? $9?
Joe?
$10 an hour?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I go for the turkey raffle. It's going to be high level.
That's what I'm waiting on. If my granddaughter wins the turkey, I want you to take it away from her. Because I just ordered a 20-pounder from Wiggins.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any other matters to come before the board? I neglected to announce that we had an executive session prior to the meeting to discuss personnel, and we will have a short executive session immediately after everyone clears the room to discuss potential litigation. So I thank you very much for your time.